Hello, everybody. Welcome to the very first episode of our very brand new show. It's the Sprawl. This is the premiere episode. We're gonna get cyberpunk today. I'm super excited. I've been wanting to play this game. I played it once. I got to do a one shot a while ago, and I've been super hype about it since. Cyberpunk is my favorite shit. You are some of my favorite people. This is gonna be good. I'm excited. We've been spending the last couple of weeks.
Who do you mean by that?
Not you, Dave. Everybody else, though.
Yeah.
We've been spending the last couple of weeks talking about various things and whether or not they are cyberpunk and kind of doing a little bit of like groundwork laying in the background. But we haven't done any. I've had to be the iron fist and be like, no, stop talking about cyberpunk.
Yeah.
Stop it. We can't.
I've been doing my best to keep Elf in line.
You got to save
I'm
the
too
A
hype,
game.
guys. I'm too hype. Too far in the hole of what cyberpunk is.
The cyber hole.
Yeah.
Can we
Too
let,
far down the cyber hole.
You don't want to go too far down the cyber hole.
Yeah.
shall we let chat in on the game that we've been playing
Yes.
with the Tumblr?
Mm.
Yes. Yeah. So
The best Tumblr ever made.
my favorite, yes, certainly my favorite cyberpunk Tumblr is this cyberpunk.tumblr.com, where you can go and submit images and movies and whatever, and ask the owner of is this cyberpunk.tumblr.com, is this cyberpunk?
It's cyberpunk. Yeah.
Yeah, it's perfect. If you're confused whether or not something is cyberpunk, the internet has you covered. So if you're tuning into this for the very first time, if this is your first Roll20 Presents show, welcome first and foremost. These lovely people will become familiar faces to you over time. There's lots of other games that we have played together. You can check those out on our YouTube. But we'll save the detailed intros for the end of the episode. I want to get right into game stuff. But suffice to say, these are good nerds, and we're gonna make something cool. I want to read something for you, audience and players. I'm gonna read the first page of the Sprawl. There's a macro in the chat. You can ! The Sprawl if you want to learn more. It'll direct you to the website. Hamish is good people. Hamish make a good game. But I'm gonna read this. I'm gonna read this intro for you. So bear with me here. So the Sprawl, the future, dark, dirty, dangerous. Your loners, punks, and criminals marginalized by society through birth, choice, or violence. Parasites, living symbiotic existences in the shadows cast by the arcologies, feeding from the scraps dangled by the megacorporations, and then scurrying back to the shadows to avoid their dismissive, destructive gaze. Those vast multinational corporations, Zaibatsu, some call them, squat over everything, pulling the strings, controlling the flow of money, information, goods, and people. Governments scamper around their feet, begging for scraps. Hydrophilic, lubricious polymers and automated cleaners keep their arcologies shining amidst the gray-brown urban sprawl which surrounds them. Corporate financial muscle pushes people around the city like blood. The megacorporations, humanity's most successful artificial organism. Technology keeps changing, shifting, mutating. It's adapt or die. There's a sticky film of information smeared over everything, a network datasphere in service to the megacorps. Buy this, obey that, buy more. See, the corps aren't satisfied with having it all. They want more, and the only way they can get it is by eating their own. For the megacorporations, espionage, theft, kidnapping, and murder are just file folders in the system architecture of success. For you, though, they're rungs on the slippery ladder out of the caustic industrial air the rest of us breathe. Play your cards right and you'll be set. Reputation, money, credibility, everything you want. Freedom. But one false step and they'll take away everything. The corps don't need you. They need people like you. Screw up and you'll be replaced by the next mouthy punk with too much raw talent and bloody ambition and not enough smarts. Tread carefully. There's plenty more like you out there in the Sprawl. The Sprawl is a game of mission-based action in a gritty neon and chrome cyberpunk future. You're the extended assets of vast multinational corporations operating the criminal underground and performing tasks that those multinationals can't do, or can't be seen to do. You're deniable, professional, and ultimately disposable. Pretty cool. So I wanted to read that because I think that, and we're going to spend basically, I think probably the first hour just talking about like, what am a cyberpunk? Because there's a lot of different, when somebody says name a cyberpunk, like a piece of cyberpunk media, everybody will come at it from a different angle, right? People are going to be like Snow Crash or Neuromancer or Ghost in the Shell or Deus Ex or whatever.
Please don't ask that question now because you just took all my answers.
I know, right? I didn't want to put you on the spot. So So the thing is that cyberpunk started as one thing and has become like an aesthetic that gets attached to a lot of other things. But the Sprawl has a particular flavor of cyberpunk that I think it's going for, which is to say that kind of early, like it's named after the first trilogy of cyberpunk books, right? Of Neuromancer and its followers. And it does have a kind of like early cyberpunk vibe. Like it wouldn't do Deus Ex necessarily as well. You're not going to be playing cops. I think a lot of the time people forget the punk part of cyberpunk. And
My main critique of most cyberpunk
thank
things.
you. Yes, exactly. There's lots of cyber out there, but a lot of it forgets that like part of it is like if you look at Case in Neuromancer, he's a dirtbag. He's a washed out dirtbag. And he's the protagonist, right? He's not like a cool Adam Jensen is not cyberpunk. I'm gonna draw that line in the sand.
Shadowrunners.
Exactly. He's a cop.
He is, yeah.
So I don't know. How do you all want to get at this? I think the main stuff to kind of talk about is like time, right? Like how do we want to play like the 80s version of cyberpunk, right? Is this like plugging telex lines into
I
the
don't
wall?
like the 80s version of cyberpunk personally.
I was gonna say I've been there, I've done that, but we should discuss. So like what kind of cyberpunk do we want to take a more modern tack?
I mean, what I would say is like if we're looking at it from a perspective of like today, you know, and then like extrapolating like today's technology into like what it would be sort of thing, and you add that corporate dystopia in there and all that stuff. Not that it isn't already, but like there's so much more stuff you can do with it than like the plugging wires into stuff thing, you know. Like I think like if we go like a modern cyberpunk type thing, that probably works best. If we're looking for a certain aesthetic, that's definitely a good one.
Yeah, I'm into it. I think that this is true of all sci-fi, but I think cyberpunk especially is not about the future. It's about the projected anxieties of the present into an imagined future state. So I think not going back and pretending that we're still scared of Ronald Reagan is a good call.
Yeah, like
we got plenty of things that we can do with today. You know what I mean? Like,
I think it's important as well when we started talking about this. Actually, even though you're turning the question over to us, I think the first person who had an idea of the kind of aesthetic and themes for that they wanted to get out of cyberpunk was you, Adam. So I think a lot of what we've been thinking about afterwards is in terms of like more modern, less zany, more gritty, more realistic, more dystopic. Dystopic, I don't know, that's not a real word. Cyberpunk. So I'm actually kind of into the fact that I can't just roll weird and shit in this because like a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse stuff, I go straight there, but I'm looking forward to have more human elements as well.
I think the interesting
thing,
transhuman. The interesting thing that we end up with cyberpunk is that a lot of people get it because cyberpunk started as a kind of fictional movement and had things that referred back to it and evolved over time, but we don't actually get to access that as it's happening. We look back at it as if it was a compressed singular thing. So people will put Neuromancer and Snow Crash right next to each other without realizing that Snow Crash was a response to Neuromancer and that it's a satirical piece in a lot of ways. And so, you know, when people are like, I want to play a pizza delivering cyber hacker named hero protagonist, they don't realize that like that's a response to that is that kind of second wave kind of zanier cyberpunk, the kind of more
revisionist cyberpunk.
Yeah, and there's certainly space for that. But yeah, I definitely feel the like more grounded in an extrapolation of present reality out into a cyber future.
And personally, I've been drowning in Ghost in the Shell. Personally.
Yeah, so Ghost in the Shell, I think, aside from the fact that it's all like cop drama, especially standalone complex, I think that the technology is quite like it's right on target with kind of what the Sprawl can do, despite being made around the same time as Snow Crash. It does still feel kind of timeless in terms of like sci-fi. Like it's a little like techier, a little far future compared to say like Neuromancer where no one had a cell phone. But I'm down. I'm down with Ghost in the Shell. What
Ghost in
about?
the Shell's setting does perfectly is that it has a really unequal distribution of the tech,
Yes.
right? Like all of the montage in the middle of the Ghost in the Shell movie is, one, just incredible, but two, is all about how like the past and future are kind of coexisting simultaneously, and about
I'm
the,
really
like,
interested in that
future
as well.
person's identity within that, right?
Well, I mean, there's that Gibson quote that's floating around about the future, right? The future is already here. It's just unevenly distributed.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's very true to every element of cyberpunk, in that cyberpunk is about, there is no middle ground, right? You're either trash or super rich. There's the middle class is dissolved. Everything's been pushed to the margins. And, it's about the struggle of being on the low end and trying to get up on the high end, or at least pull one over.
Well, and that's something that visually and in play I'm really interested in looking at, is like the divisive class structure, and like the contrast between like a city or space that is evolving so fast that it's also like letting itself decay, like on the other end. Like you have this, like, I mean, a lot of times it's done in a very vertical way. Like you have this, city in the clouds that's magical and wonderful, and then like everything below it has just been left to rot,
Yeah, the beginning, the first act of Final Fantasy VII is very cyberpunk.
You didn't let me get my bit yet. Yeah.
Dave, would you like to expound on that a little?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, for me, I mean, Avalanche, the like eco-terrorist group from Final Fantasy VII, is what I think about when I think about cyberpunk. The aesthetic of the game doesn't follow it super well, and like the themes don't transition out of that. But that first part of Final Fantasy VII, it's literally the only and biggest, most populated city in the world is controlled by people who physically are killing the planet to generate the only source of energy. They control everything, all layers of society because of it. It's super cool.
Yeah, I think Shinra and Soldier and Avalanche and Midgard and that whole first bit is very tied in. And the idea that like genetically engineered or genetically modified super soldiers, and like that's all very within the thing. And I think that there's some themes in cyberpunk about connection or disconnection, and you brought this up, Andrew, to one's humanity in such a divided system. The idea of losing yourself to an artificial thing. Whether literally like you're becoming a cyborg and losing track of your humanity, or being dehumanized by the divide between the rich and the poor.
And I really like what Blue Jay mentioned, and like the image that came to my mind is like a snake or a lizard like shedding its skin continually, right? Like in order to be this, shining new thing, there's all of this stuff that has to be left behind. And in the setting, it's like those are people, like there's an entire human lives.
Well, and we were talking a lot about Ghost in the Shell, and I feel like a lot of those visuals are there, like the constant construction and like moving upward, but just in the streets is just like garbage and like just like destroyed like old like tram cars, and just like
everything's flooding.
And it's like they're constantly trying to build this thing, but they're also just like sloughing off a bunch of like garbage and waste and like human refuse, and like ignoring it because it doesn't fit in their like perfect utopia that they're trying desperately to hold on to.
And I think I like that idea of the shed skin kind of as a thing, because it allows, and you combine that with the pacing thing of how technology is moving so quickly, it allows for people to scavenge technology that is slightly behind the curve, and that can give you a taste of like, oh, now I need the real shit, right? Like I've got last year's cyberdeck that I found in a dumpster with a pile of other last year's cyberdeck still in the packaging, because the company was like, well, we made one that's slightly better, and now we have to throw all these other ones away. They're just trash. Sorry, go ahead,
I've kind of just like as you're talking, thought about like two ways that we can, because while I think the themes are sort of cool to explore, the fact that we're going to be playing a role-playing game about it means we should really like personify or like make clear the divide that we're interested in exploring. And the two ideas that I had were the first one being people being discarded based on their suitability for society, a la if anybody's watched Psychopaths, and monitoring everybody's like emotional states and thoughts. And if you like fall below a certain like threshold, you're kind of discarded and you're made into a latent criminal or like an unwanted element.
Yeah, I mean surveillance,
and maybe as well.
That's the extraneous, like the next step, right, of the surveillance, where it's like we can surveil where you are at any given time, or surveil kind of like what you're up to. But the idea of being able to extrapolate, and this is a very modern anxiety, right? The idea that you can extrapolate who a person is from their metadata, to be like, I know what you're going to do, or I know what you're thinking because of the things that you're searching for on the internet. Or
Adam, did you see that article? It's from a German magazine, but it was kind of like guerrilla translated, about the like big data and analytics corporations that have been helping like Brexit and the Trump campaign and stuff like that.
No, that sounds
I highly
awesome.
recommend you check it out, because it's completely in that line. It's basically this academic who's it's like psychology but of data essentially, and the idea is that they produced like a theoretical model that could predict, it could basically predict your answer to this whole huge array of questions and predict your behavior in a whole bunch of ways. But they started just mining Facebook data for it. Like people could opt into this thing, and it was like frighteningly accurate in its ability to predict for that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's totally into this idea of like surreptitiously or indirectly monitoring your thoughts and behavior.
Yeah,
Forming a predictive model for you and then deciding that this is how you're going to be and how you are.
And almost on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, which might be nice as a juxtaposition or a different idea, is a city physically moving and leaving behind all of the places that it's sloughing off, and having people who follow it around, like literally scavenging like the old tower blocks that like fall off the back of like a treadmill or something.
One of my ideas for a megacorp was going to be like an autonomous floating city.
Yep.
That would
something like that would be super cool. Like physically have it moving and just like leaving shit behind that it doesn't care about anymore. Seems quite cool.
Another idea that Tris actually brought up in chat, which I think is, fits in with the sort of society of like, here's the people that are in this utopia and they've got like whatever going on, and then the people who are left behind. The idea that you can buy emotions, like drugs that just make you like happy or angry, or in like very simplistic and not like that one episode of Doctor Who in the city with like, it's just roads forever, and you just buy the emotion. It's not like a drug name. It's just like, you want to be happy. Well, so here's that.
And I think this came up in one of the early conversations we were having around Total Recall, and the idea of the experience versus the remembered experience. Like there's this idea in cyberpunk of artificial experiences, whether it's practical, like the I know Kung Fu, slotting a skill chip, or whether it's like, I hate my life, I'm going to go buy, a month of remembered vacation. I've never been to the Bahamas, but I remembered someone else's Bahamas vacation, or like living a celebrity's life, or like that kind of thing.
The idea that like things are garbage, so let us addict you basically to these things that make you forget how shit your life is for a minute.
Well, let's talk about drugs, because drugs are a thing in cyberpunk.
I'd really like to take that a step further, because I think that's a really cool idea. And I think the way that you could extract those experiences from people is by running like a farm on their brains while they're plugged into virtual ones. So you can have like virtual experiences, but while you're off in a virtual experience, like the corporation, like to pay for
is using your processing power.
Using your processing power from your brain to extract out like happiness or whatever to feed to other people.
Or
It
that
just
you're
seems
getting
super fucked up.
virtual experiences of virtual experiences of.
Well, this ties into the whole like big data thing we were talking about. Like why like put someone on a plane, fly them to some Chinese mega corporations luxury arcology in the middle of the ocean, and have them do stuff when you can just farm bits and pieces of experiences and have someone build the perfect vacation out of like a glance out of an airplane from one person and a massage from another person.
Oh,
just,
and
like,
you
build them all
you
together.
totally talk about it like the more luxurious ones are like you talk about having a first gen, which is the recollection of somebody who actually did it, and then you kind of get to second gens where it's like an approximation of the feelings that person got from experiencing somebody's real thing, and you
Like
just
the
like go
cheap
down.
thing is just this sensation of contented happiness that you get.
Yeah,
That's
like
just like
people-
vague palm trees, but the actual like expensive one is you remember
Yeah,
the whole
like
thing.
when you're hooked, you're like scrounging and living off like sixth generations or whatever, just trying to get that hit
just
of
like sunlight,
the
just
sun,
the sensation of
I mean,
sunlight.
I think the thing that comes up in my head when you talk about this is, do you get to keep those experiences if you're the person who did them?
I mean, I feel like no, right? Like,
Right?
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Like that's even
well,
worse.
it ties into the technology, right? It ties into like I think the higher end, like the sort of celebrity mimicking thing, where it's like you can not only just go on a vacation to the luxury arcology, but you can go on a luxury arcology vacation in the form of some like super famous person, and obviously that person would get to keep their memories. Because the technology that's used to scrape them is much gentler. But you can also, and this came up in chat, Mads and Trist were saying this, you could also have it such that like it's like selling blood, right? Like you go to a clinic and they scrape your happiness and you don't get to keep it. You just go out feeling drained as fuck. But hey, you get some credits for it. Like now you can go buy food.
Yes.
Or everyone else. I don't know if there's like a William Gibson story about a person who becomes famous. She's like this famous, like essentially people play through her experiences, and she is famous for like generating these really incredible, like rememberings that you can experience, kind of. But she's this like totally like destroyed wreck of a person who has like an exoskeleton that is keeping her functioning and all this kind of stuff. Like she's this total wreck, and the story is about a character who like meets her and of course falls in love with her or whatever. But yeah, just this whole idea of like people who become famous for their ability to craft interesting experiences or have interesting experiences.
They're like celebrity GMs of the future.
Well,
like
it's curated life, right? Where you're like, and this again, this spins out the whole like social media thing and like the idea of participating in someone's life because you perceive it to be more interesting than your own, and then in some cases you're buying a life that you in pieces that you can't afford to have all the time. But then maybe nobody does. Like maybe this fake utopia life that people buy, no one actually lives like that.
It's like Aladdin. Aladdin really wants to be in the Sultan's palace because it's like the coolest shit, and obviously they're super happy. And Jasmine is like, no, I want out of here. I want to go live in the streets because that's obviously where all the fun is, right?
So I guess this is a question.
The question is Aladdin cyberpunk?
Yeah, let's go to
right?
is this
Aladdin
cyberpunk?
cyberpunk.
Is Aladdin cyberpunk?
Only if he fired info bullets.
I mean, I don't want to get into a conversation.
Coolly reloading is whatever.
Yeah, I don't want to get into a conversation of whether or not 4L4DD1N is cyberpunk or not. But there is some class struggle in there, so there's some overlap.
That's something that we said we were interested in.
Yeah. No, I feel that. That's good. So yeah, like I think definitely let's not go down that rabbit hole too far, because definitely we can make a corporation that is responsible for that. The corporations that we create will be aspects of the setting that we come up against and that our characters are interacting with, and that's certainly one of them. And I think that like addiction and drugs as a thing it's been in cyberpunk since the get-go, right? Like Case and his octagons to replace his burned out experiences in not being able to surf the internet is like it's a thing, and also like addiction and classism tend to collide in fiction, right? In that it's either an engineered way to keep people placid, a la like Brave New World, or it's just something that comes up when people have to live a miserable life, or they get addicted to things that help them escape from that stuff.
Speaking of the internet, so how do we want to touch on that? Like, there's going to be a use of the internets in our campaign.
Yeah, I mean, by default, the Matrix is a thing. It is a virtual. It's very much the cyberspace that we envision from these things. It's a interconnected series of networks. People can access it by way of basic terminals, which, you know, in the kind of default fiction is like phone booths or like a home phone kind of thing. But, you know, I think we can go farther than that and say that you can, like, it's cheap at this point. It's cheap enough that someone could carry around like a smartphone equivalent and access the Matrix, if not like dive into it directly. And then the higher level stuff, the stuff that hackers do, is with customized cyber decks, like computers that allow them to you know, slice through corporate defenses and do all the real, like,
integrate with it
stuff.
to various extents, right?
So I think it's omnipresent.
Yeah.
But we should talk about in what way, right? Like, is augmented reality a thing? Do people, like, if you have eye implants or goggles or whatever, do you see the great neon NERPS overlay on the world? Is AR a thing?
I'm sure there's like custom tailored advertising and stuff, right? Like targeted advertising.
Or do we flip it and make it external, right? Is AR part of the device, or is it part of the world? Like, if holograms are a thing, is it more like in Minority Report, where they're like scanning your retinas and they're like, welcome to whatever, Mr. Johnson, here's some pants you might like, and then like a hologram appears of you wearing the pants, like walking by looking fly, right? Like,
I kind of like the idea of it being like something that only you can see, like the ability to hide things in like everyone's seeing something different and nobody knows what it is that is being seen.
I kind of like that, twinned with the idea that hackers are people who will then like make it known that they exist, or like leave calling cards of deliberately creating a shared experience for people, whether it's like just a persistent avatar that most people don't get an opportunity to have, or like a thing that you do when you are hacking is like just make it so everybody sees the same thing, and just being like I changed the entire world, not just your version of the world, not just your version of the world.
right.
But,
So that's
like, as a
the augmented
reaction,
reality hacking as a means to align people's perception of a thing. Because I think the only way that you get everybody seeing the same thing is if augmented reality, if it works on a private level, right? If your eyes or whatever are displaying, this also implies that everybody needs to have some kind of like cybernetic device to perceive this.
But then it also gives an interesting idea of why would you not? Like, in which case would you not have this? And like, what does that say about you?
Why would you not? Because you're part of that snake skin being shed by the system.
Unless you don't have a choice.
Yeah, unless you don't have a choice.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. It's like if we're doing something where like advertisement, lifestyle choices, information, and like direction and everything is all given through some kind of like individualized AR, then it would be something that people would be required to have.
Yeah,
and
I love the idea, and we'll talk about setting like the city and the government and like all of that stuff. But I love the idea in which it's mandated that if you have a kid, it's illegal not to get them these implants. Like,
and then like, what does it mean if for some reason someone doesn't have it and like or disables it?
The previous generation who are too old to get the implants or can't afford them, or whatever, they have these like cheap, shitty, like you have to wear these like glasses that then AR you up.
Well, because correct me if my biology is off here, but isn't there something about how like your eyes are the same size when you're born as they are? Like they don't grow?
Your skull in general doesn't really change shape very much.
Right. So maybe when you're a kid, you just get your eyes scooped out and replaced with these like low grade cyber eyes that all they do is just show you ads, basically.
I mean,
like
basically,
and this could be very easily tied to a like a welfare type program where it's like you're allowed to get your soy slop every week because we feed you ads all day every day, and this is paid for by the Mitsuhama Corporation. Congratulations, you're alive.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, if you were extrapolating a future time, like having overpopulation and like issues of sustaining a population over a long period of time, like at some point, you don't just go to the grocery store and like buy whatever you want. You know, like it's definitely like you're being taken care of. You get this garbage. Like, go do work for us.
Yeah, well, and I think it's not even work. It's just like ad impressions, right? Like,
Yeah, it's just you are consuming our advertisement, thus generating us ad revenue.
you start
Your
like, can
HR
you imagine
supply.
your time spent awake is like corporately mandated? Like you get all exhausted, you start falling asleep, and your body wakes you up because you haven't watched enough ads today. Like you're not allowed to go to sleep until
man.
until you've watched 2 more hours of advertisements. You're mandated for 16 hours of ads a day.
Oh man.
So Adam,
Yeah.
rather than them fully scooping out your eyes,
Yeah.
I think what would be cool is if it's just like they just like they just do a little like firmware upgrade to you.
Or
So
like
it's
they put
just,
something like behind your
tied into
cornea.
your ocular nerve. So you have your natural eyes, but they're just like feeding all this extra information into your visual cortex.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm
there's,
just imagining like the daily headaches and migraines that someone who has like some random like eye problem would
you just
like.
have this little like circuit that's under your skin on your temple that they've like implanted in you at a very young age.
But that's why if everybody gets those headaches. That's why you got to take the pills that the corporation gives you every day to make sure you're safe and happy.
Yeah,
It's not a bug. It's a feature.
Obviously.
It's a feature.
But I'm imagining now if I don't. Well, we've talked about it a little bit, but I don't think anybody's going to do it. But like the idea of a pusher, or whatever the ideas one is, it is a pusher, isn't it?
Yeah.
for sure is the
A pusher's whose their whole deal is just like something went wrong with them and they just stopped seeing ads and they just like actually learned what the world looked like and they were like, holy fuck, that would just be really cool.
It's like they
Right.
took the red pill.
Well, this would be
By mistake.
this would be the equivalent of like I think that it would be a big deal if somebody's like implant was malfunctioning and they were seeing the shed skin world that they live in.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing too is that like the mega corporations they try to control everybody, right? They try to control whether you're poor or rich. They squeeze you for different stuff. But the rich people, it's like you get better implants and you have more control over the ads. It's more targeted. It's not
Like the rich people can make their environment look how they want it. Like this one rich, like 16-year-old girl always has like sparkly everything, like pink shit and like Hello Kitty, and like some other like person is like, I want everything to be red and black color scheme, and like that's what their entire world looks like because they can customize their
I don't.
Are we talking about just like I have changed the chat colors from the Facebook?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Like if
that
you're
are
rich,
really
you can
weird?
change your perception of the world. I mean, you still get the ads, but you can like determine like what frames it or what have you.
Right. It's like it's horse armor, right? Like you can do it. No one else will ever see it, but your life is constructed in the way that you want.
Yeah.
It creates a very myopic top end of the scale, right? Where like you can control your experience and it negates other people's, right? Where you're like, I know what my voice sounds like, but if you're not hearing the sound of my voice, if you're like, I want everybody's voice to sound like a cartoon character, I can't communicate with you in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So it separates the top end from each other. And we're getting this like, because there's so few people at the top of the pile, there's this kind of weird, like they're like Olympians, right? Like they're like gods set apart from one another as much as they are from us, in that like there's probably not that many rich people and they all have their own reality because of all these implants and
We should definitely turn that off.
management.
That'd be sick.
Yeah, totally. I'm into it.
There's that whatever Isaac Asimov book where there's the one like the space colonies essentially that exist. They're all really underpopulated, and so people essentially live these like isolated lives where they never actually directly interact with other humans, and they just have their like robot entourage.
Well, that kind of abandonment thing is definitely present in like Blade Runner, right? The off-world colonies, and like he what's his name, JF Sebastian talks about how he couldn't leave Earth because he has a physical thing that makes he's gonna die soon, and he gets to live in this huge flooded apartment building by himself because everybody's just left, like everyone's gone, and all that's left are like the poor people, and everybody's kind of like flying away. There's this exodus from Earth, but only rich people can afford it. Their new life is awaiting them on the off-world colonies. So I kind of like that too. I like the idea of. I mean, I guess it depends on how far future-y we want to be. Like,
I mean,
can people leave Earth? Is that a thing? Have they?
I like the idea of having that crush. Like you can't escape this sort of pressure. Like I like the tension that creates in not being able to just be like, I don't like this, I'm just gonna leave.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have to be able to afford to leave.
I mean, I'm sort of with you on that, Blue Jay, in that like my vision of like the great cyberpunk, you know, like city or whatever is, you know, the towering bright neon skyscrapers and the super cool like corporate buildings and like that section of the city, and that's really nice and super great. But then there's like Kowloon walled city, like, you know, a little way away that like is everybody else who can't afford that shit, like basically, you know,
That
like
one is in sight of the other.
yeah, basically like right next to each other. And it's just this weird like juxtaposition of like really, really, really poor and super rich.
Mhm.
Honestly, if you want to see that, just come to Vancouver.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's the thing, right? Like we're taking the anxieties of the present and we're extrapolating them out. I think the thing about space and cyberpunk, they're not, because I'm seeing some people in chat being like, space is more like straight sci-fi. There is a space bank in Neuromancer. Right, the Zurich orbital.
They go into space.
Yeah, they literally go to space.
It's final thing of the.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's this group of people who like essentially exist in orbit of Earth. They haven't like left Earth.
Yeah, that's
fully, right? So
yeah, and they're considered weird too. Like they're an enclave of the hyper rich. And there's like some like genetic cloning and like
cultish,
very weird culty things going on up there. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, your characters are not that. You're not.
And
you don't get to go to space.
There's definitely the potential to insert things like that into the fiction, but like I feel like I'm more interested in analyzing like the interaction of the hyper rich and this very, very poor, and where and when that happens. And like if you just allow them to like be like, all right, I'm just going to go to the moon, then it's less easy to have that interaction.
Well, and I think we can put space as like the dream, right? That like that's the thing that the corporations are trying to sell as the next thing, right? Like fuck Earth. Earth is a dump. Earth is for all these poor schlubs. You can leave.
Yeah,
you should come with us to the moon.
Yeah, like exactly. That is the very close future that is being like sold to the super rich and like occasionally shown like in ads to the poor. Like, look at this thing you could never ever have.
Elon Musk Jr. has built a space station on the moon, and it's time for you to join us. Come, it's like Elysium, right? Elysium is about that. Elysium is like the Earth is all fucked, and all the rich people are like leaving to go live on this paradise.
Okay, so
it's like Protestantism, Adam.
Yeah, it's like that. Yeah.
I think one of the questions that we need to ask ourselves is like, how far away from now are we? You know, in our setting, what is the year? You know, like maybe not exactly, but
it's
like
20XT6.
Yeah, it's 20 XTX. I like leaving the setting the year kind of vague, because then we don't have to pick, like, because you know, like November 2019 seems like pretty fucking close, and where's my replicant?
I mean I remember I realize that, but I'm not thinking like, oh, let's pick a year and that's what it is. What I'm saying is like there's a certain estimation of like what is possible or impossible within a certain time frame.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely.
And if we're talking about like before space is a big thing, and maybe it's the next thing, you know, it's not that far. Like, it's not super far from now, but it, you know, I don't know.
I think the thing is that we have to look at what drives technology, because technology will set the point for us. Where like we can have hyper advanced computer networks, cybernetics, all of that stuff, but what is driving it? And it sounds like it's corporate, not military, right? Like the space race was a military thing. Space was going to be the big thing because we had to show the world who is the fastest at getting there, right? And showing off all of that military muscle.
Yeah, entirely a military wing thing.
Yeah.
Also,
I'm like imagine what? Sorry.
Hilariously, during that time, all of the investment in anything else was also framed as military investment.
Right.
So it was the like defense fund for children's education, the defense fund for
Right.
like
Yeah.
honestly, they were funding public schools with or they were framing it as a defense expenditure because that was the kind of zeitgeist, right? That was like what it was about at the time, was all about this like militarization and mobilization on that level.
Yeah, touching on that, I think it would be interesting if like the corporations had consumed, like I think Alex posted in chat something about like what do countries still exist, and I think it would be interesting if it's like there are still world leaders, but like they're basically the queen in that they don't really matter. They're just figureheads.
There's a government of some kind, but who cares?
This is
Yeah.
this is both I think the most like sort of sadly optimistic thing about how Shadowrun handled this, where it was like, oh, the world governments get into like fights and then restructure the world, and corporations have extraterritoriality, and I'm like, they wouldn't stop there. They would just be like, no, just America, Canada, the UK, just everybody just go to sleep. We don't need you anymore.
Yeah,
Exactly. This
it's
is the
no
United
longer
States
important.
of Apple,
This is the
Amazon.
new order.
But
Yeah.
and that's the other thing that I liked. That's something I liked about Snow Crash, is that there's a pizza company that is more influential and richer than the United States government, right? Like the government is just a little walled enclave where nobody takes they don't take it seriously. It's like America, registered trademark.
Yeah,
I'd
and
like
I
to-
like that idea of it's just faded away, and it's just not like people, like some people still think like we can just like get the governments to overthrow the corporations, and there's all these old laws and stuff, and everyone else is just like those garbage like buildings in the middle of
No.
fucking nowhere where nothing gets done. Like,
If you believe that, or if you like know about that, you are an Ed. And this is something I came up with in the chat. And they call you an Ed because basically the only things that really remain that they're allowed to do by corporations is like educational videos for children. So like if you believe any of that, you're like an Ed.
educational videos that have ads on all like sides of them, like here's your
Well, and that's-
education,
I
also advertisements.
I like that idea of it's not the United States of America, it's Pizza Hut presents the United States of America, right? Like, yeah, I'm fascinated with the idea of the state as a vestigial, like, holdover. The democracy and state politics and stuff have fallen by the wayside as, you know, hypercapitalism has taken over and been like, no, we don't need this. All America is a brand. All any country is a brand, and we can leverage that not to manage how to organize people, because we got that. There are workers, and there are bosses, and there are the rich and the poor, and that's all the social stratum that we need. We don't need, what are you voting? Buy things, watch ads, like,
Yeah, vote with your dollar,
yeah,
right?
right.
Exactly.
The rhetoric of like, we empower you by way of money, and that's like, your money is political now, but of course money is the least egalitarian, you know, way of assigning people power. So yeah.
Well, and that's something that is
Exactly.
interesting as well. Like, at what level do the uber poor? Because obviously the hyper rich don't really work. They just have money. In my mind, like that's a thing that occurs. Like, why would they work? Why would they need to? They just have money that makes money. But what about the very, very poor? Like, at what, like, is there a level where like you just don't work because your life and skills have no value and you're
Well,
just like allowed to continue living? Or
Yeah, so this is a thing that I think that, like, the idea of corporations, because I think the thing is that even in these situations, corporations are not outwardly presented. PR is still a thing, right? Outwardly, they're not presenting as like, ha ha ha, we're an evil corporation. They have to at least seem like they're doing good. So the corporations probably either got together or merged or whatever, and were like, we want to create a basic, like, we want everyone to live, right? No one should die of starvation. We've defeated starvation thanks to our corporation. And this ties back into that thing where it's like you don't, and this is already happening, where if you can't afford a thing, sometimes you could just watch an ad to have the thing you wanted, right? And so it's like, oh, can't afford to eat or get clean water? Well, have some babies, hook them up with the ad viewing thing. We'll get some ad revenue, become a familial influencer, and we'll feed your family.
Yeah, I mean, shit.
so
There
like
you go.
the very poor who aren't like merchants or like skilled laborers of some kind are just consuming ads to survive.
Yeah,
Well-
we'll buy, and the thing we talked about before with feelings, because it's not just it's there. You use the poor as a massive prevalent focus group, right? Where it's like we have a new product, so we're gonna blast ads for that product to a certain subset of the people who cannot afford or are not able to do things, and we will scrape their emotions, and we will use that data to figure out how the product should be sold, right? Like if everybody watching these ads feels terror, then we need to either the product, that's good because the product should make you feel scared, or we need to like tweak it. And we've also harvested all of these like this emotional response that we can use to make media.
I really like the idea. If we're talking about like money not being the correct thing, I think we should maybe tie that back into the space idea and have a credit being like the common parlance for something like 1/1,000,000th of a ticket to space.
Yeah.
So all life is building up to this ideal, and like rich people, like they've got it, and it's just this arbitrary number,
Well, and that's
and like
that's
every
kind of,
increment of your life is building towards this one thing that they want you to like want.
well, and that's kind of the thing, right? In that you're it's its own economy, right? Because it takes so much to get there. You can cut it up, and you can say, I'll trade you 1/80th of a ticket for a new car or whatever. So you can live this like fat life on Earth, but there's still like ruins and rubble and garbage and shitty air and all of that stuff here.
And people crowding you
Yeah,
everywhere.
yeah,
And if
but-
you want like the idea of here, you can have space.
Yeah, it's the whole like
Imagine.
you can reign in hell or you can serve in heaven, right? Like if you cash in your ticket, you get to go to the off-world colonies and join everybody else who was rich and join that kind of post-scarcity society. And maybe that's the dream, right? You go there and you'll never need for anything.
In the movie Passengers that just came out, there was the like you can go to these off-world colonies, but like part of your job is to make them into a like city.
Resort.
Like it's basically like it's this uninhabited, no cities, no towns, no buildings, no anything world. And so you can either get there by having a very, very useful skill, like being an engineer or an art, like knowing agriculture and stuff that is no longer valuable on Earth. Like you have this useful skill that is more useful to them off world than it is on the world, or just by being really, really rich and being like, I want to go live and have the room to explore. Like I want to be an adventurer and I can't do this on Earth. So I'm going to go to this new planet where there's actually things to still find and be the first person to see.
I think what it does is it gives us an opportunity to do that big separated divide where it's like there's the earth realm where everybody is like poor and subjugated, and there are these few who stay on Earth to kind of like rule the slums, and then there's this distant future that they're craving and that everybody wants to like go and be in the future. And I think that knowing that you're rich, but you could be richer, you could be in heaven with the other people on the Starship Enterprise, but you're not yet, turns people cruel, right? Where they're like, well, now at least I'm better than you, right? At least I'm better than the rest of this scum.
Like I'm so close, you know.
And I like the idea of there being that like idyllic dream. Like if I'm just good enough at something, I can get there without needing to like save and scrounge for my entire life and also my like 3 generations from me life to get there. Like if I'm good enough at this one thing, I might be able to get to this spot, like hop the line, as it were. And I like that dream being something that people could like go for, you know, like if I can't like afford to get there, maybe I'll just like, you know, do really well on my space test and then I'll be able to get there.
I mean, and all of that's bullshit, right? Like
it is.
I think
it's garbage.
I think
the fact that they sell you on it.
Yeah, like it has to. I think the promise has to be fake. I think the promise has to, in some way, be like, yeah. I mean, people
Like
just
no one's actually gone to space, and they just like you're the dog that got sent to the farm. You know, like
Yeah, but I like having that like sold to you. Like,
Sure.
just be good enough at X and don't get in trouble with the law, and then you can go to space.
It's just another way of like carrot and sticking the entire society into doing something.
Exactly.
Right.
And that ideal, the carrot is always go to space.
Well, and I like the idea too of like, and maybe this is a brand thing, but like the exceptional individual, right? Like, are you an exceptional individual? Find out by taking the exceptional individual test. And like, you know, it's that promise of
it's really looking for so much else than
even if you're really like poor and born into a terrible position and stuff, you could be one of these exceptional individuals that maybe a corporation might take notice of you and be like, no, sir, please skip the line. You're special.
I love that idea.
Can it be are you an exceptional human? And then the shortened version of you are an ex-human? Like,
well, I like that it's
like a transhuman state.
Yeah, it's giving you this dream, and what it actually is something completely different that you don't want at all. You know, like they're selling you on like, hey, you're really great. Come into this room where we're gonna do stuff, and you're gonna hate it, but you think that this is going to space.
It's almost regressive in the sense that it reinforces a kind of divine mandate. Like there's a feudalist kind of stance here, a monarchic stance, where it's like, well, the people in space deserve to be there because either they worked hard because capitalism, or they were born exceptional. They were just better than you and got to skip the line.
We used science to determine that they were better humans than you.
I
like the idea too of like people getting like, I mean, we're talking in circles here again, but like the whole like psychological evaluation portion. So like even if you are an exceptional human and you go into the corporate ladder, you're still constantly being monitored, and if you like slip at all,
well, sure, they hold it over
or
your
like
head, right?
hacking yourself into like, I'm gonna hack the exceptional human test, and that's how I'm gonna get out of this situation.
You're working at a corporation and you're
panicked and
really
anxious.
You work so hard at a corporation, you develop like an addiction for like positive experiences to offset all of the stress that you get from being constantly monitored and evaluated.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, man. Like,
super cool.
You can apply to be Twitter verified, but you don't ever know how that happens. And maybe they'll just keep rejecting you. You never know. You might just get it. It doesn't matter how many followers you have, but if you have more followers, they'll probably verify you, right? So keep working hard. Get out there. Get your social points. If you get enough likes, maybe you'll get to go to space. I like it. I'm into it. And it does tie right back into that idea of like the constant monitoring under the auspices of like, well, you signed up for this because you don't want to get missed, right? You don't want to be an exceptional human and not have anyone find out.
We need to harness your data.
Listen, Mr. Jones, we know that you're special and your children are special too. Right? Like it's totally, that idea of buying into willingly being subjected to constant surveillance just in case you get that phone call one day where someone is like, it's your time. Let's go.
Yeah, and you instead of going to space, you definitely transcend. You are an exceptional human up to the point that you transcend.
And nobody ever hears about anyone that goes past that point.
Yeah, and
because they've done it. They're in space.
They would use all kinds of and if you think about it the other way around, it's like if you were in space, you wouldn't want to have to think about this garbage pile.
Yeah.
Would you? Like, no, we wouldn't dare make them talk to you or come back or visit because they've been ascended. Like it's very pseudo religious, and I like that idea that it would get co-opted in that way. Yeah, you are special. Everything is great. Cool. Okay. Well, let's talk about setting, like in the traditional sense, because we've talked about the world and kind of what that's going to feel like. I can think of some corporations that might emerge from this and how they might be pitted against one another. But let's talk about the location, because this game, cyberpunk, requires, and this is a thing, cyberpunk requires grounding in the familiar. There's a reason why it's not a pistol, it's a Sanrio brand faux stopper 400. Like everything is branded and clear and tied to the world at large. And I think that we can get real sci-fi about this stuff, but it's fun to tie it back to existing corporations, existing spaces, existing places in the world. And the first way we can do that is by picking a location on Earth to set our game. Now, it doesn't have to be like it's set in this specific city, because the Sprawl, the game is named after a place in Neuromancer in the following books that is, I think, like Atlanta and like the regions around it have all been merged into one city. The Bridge trilogy has NorCal and SoCal as sprawls, right? Cities that have grown into one another. You can take a train from LA to San Francisco in 5 minutes. So we can pick a city and make a sprawl of that. But it will definitely color how we approach the game, the kinds of things, because the Atlanta sprawl is going to be very different from like Night City and Chiba.
Does anybody have like a oh man, it'd be cool if we did this vibe kind of?
I think it'd be cool if we did Mega Berlin.
Mega Berlin.
Flooded Mega Berlin is what my vote is.
Like a German kind of.
I like the thing with me and like a sprawling city, and like this is going back towards like wanting that pressure of not enough space, is like I just like there has to be in my mind something that contains it. Like you can't just be like, this city is literally the entirety of the Eurasian continent, but it still has that like feeling of pressure. Because I just like, I don't know, I can understand that could be a thing.
So evidently the sprawl in the Sprawl trilogy is Boston to Atlanta.
That's so big though.
Yeah.
That's
well, and
so
that's
much space.
But that's the thing, right? If we extrapolate it out, it's just like massive overcrowding, total destruction of non-urban environments, and yeah, you live in the Boston Atlanta sprawl. So Berlin would be a start, but it would be like Berlin to Paris. Right?
Yeah,
it would be like the Euro megaplex.
The one suggested in chat there is Germany, France, Luxembourg, Netherlands. You know, like one place.
Just the entirety of Europe, basically.
I kind of wish I'd been to Germany more, but I mean, this is probably only because I know there, but I would really like to see it set on like where I live, on an island.
Yeah,
and
that's
you
the
can start
pressure.
doing
An
really
island
cool.
yeah.
The pressure of living on an island where literally everything from coast to coast to coast is just all this city. Like
the trouble with islands is that there are none aside from like Hawaii or like Polynesia that are separated enough. Like even if the whole United Kingdom became one major like city, they wouldn't stop there, right? Like there would be bridges that would the English Channel would get filled in.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what if it's like Sweden, Norway, the peninsula is just all.
Yeah.
Is
That's
it cold still?
And then it's fucking in the Arctic North, or
yeah, it'd be like the Gothenburg megaplex, because that's like right in the middle of.
That sounds awesome.
It's in the middle of Copenhagen, Stockholm, and Oslo. Gothenburg is like right in the middle of that triangle. So like that fits. That's a thing we could do. And like I do like the idea of, and it doesn't have to necessarily be cold because, you know, climate change is a thing.
Yeah.
But I do like the idea of it being of like lots of like snowy wind and like big neon towers coming up out of snow.
And then I like that idea also because it focuses me on selling like you've never felt the sun on your skin. Have some sunlight. Like you have never seen a tropical island. Like here's your fake tropical vacation that you'll never get. Like the idea of the danger of actually like leaving the corporate space and going outside because you could die. Like if you leave like our protected giant Uber mall, like you will just get hypothermia and die. Like
do y'all remember the like frozen-ish planet from Cowboy Bebop?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That is very much an aesthetic.
Yeah. Well, and it gives us like a big body of like the big body of water, right? Like Kattegat, that like space between like southern and northern there. That whole like bay is really good. I'm looking at Google Maps.
And then as you go north too, right, that would be just water with the melt of the polar ice caps and stuff. It would still be, you're still in the Arctic Circle, it's still cold, but there's no longer a large landmass. It's just like this ocean that then has like offshore oil rigs and
well, and I think the thing is we'd get a lot of diversity too as climate change affects the middle part of the world. People push north and south, so it's not like it would just be like a bunch of people like
white Norwegian people.
Everything
Vikings,
pretty much. Yeah, everything like south of France probably is too hot to occupy. So like a lot of African, Middle Eastern, Turkish, Romanian, like people from those areas would have moved to the megaplex to get out of the burning heat that's spreading from the middle of the
Yeah, the
world.
Sahara Desert is now like from the Tropic of Cancer to the
Right, yeah.
That's-
Everything south of the Baltic Sea is pretty much just not a thing. Yeah.
It's solar farms.
That sounds
It's
like a
sand-swept
fantastic
Oh
place.
solar
yeah,
farms,
totally.
like,
Well, and there
really
would be room for going on
underground.
missions to those places, right? Some like
Yeah.
Syrian solar farm needs to get hit to knock out the corporations.
And yeah, anyone living in the equatorial region lives underground and then has these like massive like solar
Oh,
farms
I'm
and other
about it. I'm super
Oh yeah,
Um,
I like
Hell
it.
yeah.
So in terms of aesthetic, and this is again because I don't know the places that we're kind of talking about, but you said Gothenburg, and now I really, really want neon lit Gothic architecture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be sick.
We
yeah.
could go a little,
Just
little
like-
cyber baroque.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the image for me at the moment is like looking at the corner, like where Batman would sit, like next to a gargoyle overlooking a thing, but that's like frozen because we're doing it all in an icy place, and you've got like the neon like lights reflecting through the icicle that's overhanging on this like demon that's hung over, but the demon's got laser eyes or some shit. I don't even.
It's
The
been a
demon has
long,
it's
long
like a
time since
gargoyle
I've
with its
watched
mouth
it.
open, and there's a security camera, one of those globe security cameras in it.
Yeah,
That's
It's
awesome.
been
Yes.
a long time since I've watched it, but like you're recalling to me like the combination of like gothic and neon, like Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, right? Like there's just
Yeah.
like fucking neon lights surrounding like this giant like church and shit.
The trick,
like,
yeah, the trick with that movie is it's so California, like it's so
Well,
like
yeah.
inherently California. But I get the aesthetic. you
just
mean.
the visual. Yeah, I'm not talking about
What's
the movie
the-
itself.
Like yeah, there is room for that like dark, snowy, neon lit, like snow drifts kind of people wearing, it's like cyber parkas. People wearing like cold weather gear outside. Yeah, I like it. And again, like cyberpunk is a genre of extremes where hot and cold are on the far end and there isn't much in the middle. So maybe yeah, the arcologies are well heated, but like outside of them, you know, you
Yeah,
gotta
you're like mask on, full fur, like huge thing.
yeah.
yeah, and you've got a big backpack that's got like a neon bar on it, showing how much heat you have left, like stored in a tank.
Mhm.
If you go outside for too long.
Or you're like
Yeah.
breathable oxygen.
It's
So
like
you-
the
Yeah,
it's
something
like the
like that,
suit.
yeah.
It's the suit that James Hong is wearing in Blade Runner, right? Where he's got that
Yeah.
that big thing with all the tubes, like heating the suit while he works in the Sub-Zero lab.
Yep,
Yeah.
perfect.
Oh, cool. I like it. Cool. Okay. Well, we'll set our game there. Obviously, we can touch on what the rest of the world is like as we go, but I think that's a good place to start. Why don't we grab a short break and then we'll come back and we'll start making mega corporations and characters.
Hell yeah.
Sounds good. Okay. Cool.
Perfect.
Stick around. We have more run up to our game of the Sprawl when we get back.